And we're going, okay. Welcome. You are in the 5 o'clock talk in the, what is this? Suite something or other? Track 4. There we go. If you intended to get on this flight, then you're in the right place. We are going to talk about some macro malware. Yeah, sort of. I mean, with these talks, you just sort of do your thing, and you never know what happens. So, let's see. So, who am I? Joff Thyer, husband, father, geek, musician, all that good stuff. InfoSec researcher, developer, pen tester, and an employee of Black Hills, most of which are sitting in this room with us to do encouragement in the second row. Thank you, guys. Security Weekly co-host. I get to have an awfully good, fun time on Thursday nights. If anybody's interested in Security Weekly, please come along. Especially love to heckle Jack. He's a lot of fun. We have one show that we did where Paul actually titled the show Not Paul's Show, because Jack and I just took over and told him to shut up. So where's Paul when you need him, right? So yeah, so that was good times. Good times. So there was actually one time in my life where I actually had hair. I was really pretty pleased with that. I had my best Steve Jobs look going there, collar and all. But I like to think as I'm growing up, I'm evolving much closer to this guy, Jean-Luc, he's the man. All right, so I'm probably not going to do this for too long, actually. I was surprised at how short the actual slide deck is. So, hey, we might have an early minute and you get to your beer earlier, so that's good, All right, so without further ado, I think we're just going to go fishing, just for fun. And I want to talk about, really it's largely about MS Office document macro stuff, how we've used some of that stuff in Black Hills for some of our engagements and had really good times with it. So, for some strange reason, there's a unicorn in this slide. I don't know this. I don't know what that is. So anyway, moving on. So we had this awesome engagement that me and Bo were on, which we had a tremendous amount of fun with, right? And we, like most of you that are pen testers, we've got ways of doing phishing emails and phishing servers. And we thought, let's embed some cool ass macro stuff into a Microsoft Word document. Not a spreadsheet. Normally we'd use a spreadsheet, but let's put it in a Microsoft Word document and let's do a coupon, So one of the first things you have a problem with when you're doing macro malware is the users have this discouragement from Microsoft. This thing might be dangerous, so don't press this button. So what do? You put a thing at the top that says press the button, right? Guess what the users do? They press the button, right? Okay, so that's not the end of the funny part of the story, though. This coupon, we deliberately crafted. I left the date on there. I probably shouldn't have done that. We deliberately crafted so that it was an expired coupon. When it went out in the fish, it went out with the day prior, okay, in the coupon. 50% off to some awesome place that was nearby to the customer, right? The customer decides, hey, guys, we'd like you to send out 350 of these. I'm like, okay, that's what you want because the customer's always right? So we hit go. Send out 350 emails with a coupon like this into the organization. About 20 minutes later, I get the call from the customer. Can you make it stop? I'm like, what do you mean, can you make it stop? She goes, we have people running out the door to exercise their coupon. All right, that's not even the end of the funny, right? Later on, we find out the store honors the coupon. Can you believe it? I mean, we just laughed our asses off. I mean, it was just insane. I'm like, you are kidding me, right? All right. So back to some serious, right? Because we got to do a little bit of that. So, your standard Metaspoit macro payload, pretty good. Like, I think DigiNinja, Robin, right? About a year or two ago, pointed out that the old way they were doing it was pretty average, right? Because you had to do, I don't know, most of you guys probably remember, you had to paste all this shit into the document, and then you had to enable the macro shit, and then if you didn't get it just right, it didn't work at all, right? So DigiNinja pointed out that, hey guys, look, you can call virtualAlloc, RTL move mem, create thread right in Visual Basic. Why should we do all this shit where we're writing in exe and stuff? Fuck that, okay? Let's just put the stuff in here, stick the thread into RAM, we're rocking, okay? It works great. It works great, okay? So, except some of the research that I've been doing, the AVs will flag it, right? They'll be like, hey guys, you're using an RTL move mem and a macro. What the over? You know? Ding, 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 ding. You know, game over, right? All right, so I started this journey because I was like, how do we fix that? Like, I don't want this AVs flag because AVs are a pain in the ass, right? We just want it to get out of the way, right? Just don't bother me. In fact, I don't even bother disabling anymore. It's kind of funny, but don't bother me. Just stand aside and just don't look at what I'm doing. Nothing but good stuff happening here, right? All right, so it was actually John came up to me, John Strand, our glorious leader. He said, Joff, can you make this stuff better? I'm like, yeah, shit, yeah. I found this. I'm like, I can just alias the functions. So then in the macro, you don't use VA1337, right? But then in the macro, you just call these random strings instead of virtualAlloc because you re-alias them at the top, right? AV was like, oh, I see nothing. That looks pretty cool. Like, okay. So I went through like, okay, Mr. Sophos, you see this? Mm-mm. Okay. Mr. McAfee, do you see this? Nah, fuck no, that's good. Okay. Mr. Symantec, do you see this? I don't see anything. Except one thing. I got to give Symantec a little bit of creds here, right? If you don't encode your second stage, let's say you're doing a interpreter thing. If you don't encode your second stage, Mr. Symantec goes, hey, freaking network IDS, I see a second stage. Like, you put the encoder on, it's like, okay, I don't see that anymore. All right, fine. All right, so another example, right? We had a lot of fun. We did one up in the Northeast, and, you know, the people in the Northeast, they tend to really have a problem with traffic. You know, they get really freaking irritated. So when you're doing a social engineering kind of thing or a fish thing, right, you want to get them emotionally engaged so they are interested in the content, right? Now, I can't show you the dynamic version of this because I have a policy, no live demos. Sorry, Mick, but it's a thing, right? But what we do with spreadsheets is we'll pop up one tab that says, hey, Mr. User, you really need to click this, right? And then it just flips over to the other tab and shows them the cool content. And of course, they clicked it and something happened. And they're like, wow, that's awesome. And then we tell them, you got really bad traffic problems. And this is really fucked up, right? And you've got a big problem, right? And it comes from some property manager somewhere. And so what do the users do? They reply to the email and say, when exactly is this going to happen? Because I'm really concerned about that, right? But total ponage, right? Before then, we got like 10, 20 shells. Like, I don't know. I'm busy. I can't tell you when this is going to happen. It's in the spreadsheet. Didn't you read the spreadsheet? So, yeah, that was good fun. But anyway, the realization I had as we were doing some of this work in Black Hills, I was like, look, the macro stuff's fun, but Visual Basic's kind of limited. And everybody's using PowerShell for stuff today. Why don't we just run PowerShell from the macro? It's much more fun, right? So I had this customer, he's like, really badass. I mean, some people are doing it right out there, right? These guys would not let me drag any executable content across the perimeter of their network. Period, right? Hey, so what do? Well, you run this thing in PowerShell that like decodes a base 64 thing and then rewrites it as the exe. And it's not an exe when it comes over the perimeter, right? It's just base 64. Show me any IDS, network IDS vendor that can actually pick up base 64 and match it. Does anyone actually know that? Because I have never seen a network IDS vendor that can match anything base 64. They're like, I don't know how to deal with it. They just don't. They just give up, right? So there you go. It's just an example, right? So PowerSploit is the other hot topic, right? Wow. Thanks. Matt Graber's stuff, just fabulous project. I'm like, okay, we got to put these things together. Let's take PowerShell, let's shell out from a macro, and let's turn this into a macro delivery for our Office-based macro fishes. So I started down this journey, and I'm like having fun with Visual Basic. By the way, it's like having a root canal. I mean, it's like, are you like every 10 minutes, it's like, you've got to be kidding me. It works this way? Really? Like, it's really quite a thing. But anyway. So the first version was this. Pretty simple. We invoke PowerShell. We do a download, HTTP download, from a shortened link of the invoke shellcode function, okay, which is straight out of the PowerSploit project. We pop a shell, right? We do a reverse HTTPS, and that's built in. Those flags are just built into PowerSploit. And then we put it in the auto open, workbook open. We run it. It just goes, right? So that works pretty well. It's got a little bit of an artifact, right? Because it reaches out to the network, and it reaches out to the network. You know, the potential that the customer's going to see that callback, right? You're reaching out to GitHub. Why are you doing that, right? But more on that later. So I was like, okay, let's do a second version. Let's put the payload in the macro, because I don't just want to run reverse HTTPS, right? I want to do a interpret a shell back, and I want to do a reverse TCP, and I still want to do it in the macro. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Let me work out how I can put the payload string actually into the VB macro. And it turns out it wasn't too hard. You just like define a string variable and put it in there. There is a little bit of a caveat though. Visual Basic doesn't like long strings. It hates them. It makes you like do these continuation things. Well, then there's another problem, and we'll get a little bit of that later too. You get too many continuations, and then Visual Basic goes, oh no, you've got too many continuations now. You're a long string that's all concatenated and continuated. Yeah, okay. It just, again, Visual Basic's enough to make you want to punch your monitor. And so, okay. There's another interesting dilemma which I haven't worked out, and if anybody in this room well, I sort of have worked out, but anyone in this room who knows. I'm sitting there in Microsoft Word or Excel, it didn't matter which, and I'm running PowerShell, and I'm like, I want to run 64-bit, right? And this is Office running on a 64-bit machine, but it's not the 64-bit version of Office, right? It's the 32-bit version of Office. Okay, so fair enough. But I'm forking out the PowerShell, right? I'm running a process. Why shouldn't I be able to run the 64-bit version of PowerShell? Really? Microsoft doesn't let you do that. When it forces you and keeps you in a 32-bit world. So what I've got on the screen here is a little script I wrote in VB to sort of prove this out, because I had to. I was like, all it does here is it looks at the size of the integer pointer, and if it's 4, it says, okay, this is a 32-bit machine. If it's an 8, it says it's a 64-bit machine, right? Mick, you have a question?
How much profanity did you use when you found that out?
I screamed and yelled and ran around the house, and my wife said, what in the world is going on? Because you know what I was actually trying to do in the process? Actually, let me repeat the question, right? Mick said, because in the good sans way, Mick said, how much profanity did I use when I found this out, right? So I did scream and yell a lot because I'd spent a lot of time trying to jam 64-bit payloads into the string, and I was like, it's not working. Why is it not working? What is going on, right? And I'm like tearing my hair out, if I had any. And it was just crazy, right? And then I realized, right, and I ran this thing, and I was running Process Explorer at the same time. And it will not run the 64-bit version of PowerShell. It appears to replace the path. Because if you see up top, the full path was there to the OS native version. And what did it do? It went into syswow 64 and ran that version, which is the 32-bit compatibility version on a 64-bit system, right? Which is also really freaking confusing. But so I was like, wow, seriously. So double facepalm, right? So I got beyond that, right? But so in my scripts, I'm like, okay, I'm stuck with 32-bit payloads with a standard Office install, because actually it's very unusual in my experience to find a 64-bit Office install, because there are limitations. People don't like doing it. And so you really don't want to go there. Right? It just, yeah. All right, so what's next? So Jean-Luc Picard says, please help me create a payload, right? How am I going to create the payload? We need to get a payload out here. So there's a couple things to do. You could do sudo make me a sandwich. That would work, right? Has anybody got a bash joke? I had to throw a little bash in there. Bash the bash. Oh, we have a question back here, please. Yes. Good observation. We got to put him on the beer list, Mick. Thank you. Yeah. So the question was, why can't you use just the sysnative path if you find out the architecture of the system? And I hadn't tried it, so thanks for that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Of course, my goal was actually like focusing on the PowerShell thing, right? Like, what the heck is this thing, right? But yeah, thanks. Good observation. We have a question down the back somewhere there. Very good. So the comment was, there's also, I think I heard this correctly, a WoW 64-bit redirection API in which you can actually disable the redirection. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so great, appreciate that. We got some answers there, right? But actually, I think we have. Was there another question there? Yes, or maybe somebody was just scratching or something. Anyway, okay. So yeah, this is really how the payload's created. Pretty simple. Just a little bit of UNIX foo, Msfvenom. Notice I said UNIX. I'm gonna date myself, right? But Msfvenom. Pipe with all this, pipe cut said tr, it's just a formula I worked out to make it work. And it takes the output from Msfvenom as a PowerShell string and gives you just that one string of payload, right? Which is nice. Okay, but is it perfect? No, because guess what? We talked about this earlier. VB won't let you just paste in one string that's, 8K long or whatever the size is, right? So you have to break up the payload lines into the VB in the macro to make this happen. Right? So that's fine. That's cool. And that's the path I went. Okay. You probably can smell something coming here because all of this is really too much work to like manually prep for your test, right? And one thing I really despise is having to remember syntax because my brain's a FIFO and I've been doing this a while and shit just falls out the other side. And the other thing is, I want to be able to move quick on the test, right? I just want this stuff ready to go. So, I'm certainly not going to spend the time going through all of this before a test. I want to make sure it's there, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, too. All right. Oh, another unicorn. Care Bear apparently doesn't like him. Wow. While we're breaking on that slide, has anybody else got any other questions so far? Apart from grinning at the slide. Nope. Okay. All right. So one of my other concerns was, okay, we have this macro and we're doing PowerShell within the macro. It's like that's a little too obvious, right? I mean, come on. We can see what you're doing. You've got PowerShell.exe in there. You've got all this stuff going on. Just a little bit obvious. So what do? We go into obfuscation mode. Randomize the variables, right? That's pretty easy. And then I said, hey, I wonder if I can build in symmetric encryption into the macro. Okay? Of course, anybody who's done Visual Basic are going, are you freaking suicidal? You want to do symmetric encryption in VB? But turns out a simple XOR routine actually does the trick. Well, actually, I'll go back. So all this is an XOR routine in VB. Takes the XOR key, repeats it over the string. So you can have a short key if you want. And out the other side, you've just got XORed text, right? Well, that's a great little obfuscation technique for this macro because all I need to do is supply a key, right? But after that, wait, I can just mix it up, get my strings all nicely XORed. So I've also got a key management problem, right? So what am I going to do, right? I got to put the XOR key into the macro, but then I don't want the XOR key to be the same every time because that'd be no fun, right? Oh yeah, there's the key. Yeah, busted, So what do? We generate a new dynamic key every time. We make all the variables random, and then any of the obvious strings, we're going to XOR them. All right? So out comes prototype 3. Now, it's not very obvious, right? But what I'm doing there is XORing the create object string. It's the wscript.shell stuff, okay? I am leaving the payload alone, and again, I'm going to come back to that, and then I'm taking the PowerShell command, and I'm XORing that as well, and I'm putting the XOR function into the macro so that I can un-XOR things, if you like, right? That's my sophisticated encryption. But turns out the VB will do that quite nicely for you. It's not really that sophisticated. All right, so as I was saying earlier, generating this stuff manually every time is no fun. It's really preferable to have dynamic keys, and so I went into automation mode. I'm like, okay, we got to build something here that will build the macro, that'll do the randomization, that'll also generate dynamic keys every time, and will put all that stuff together and give me some output that I can use, right? So I've got this tool. It's one of these tool release things. This is going to be a very short talk. I got this tool, Combo, PowerShell, Batch Command, Visual Basic, Macro Generator. The extra PowerShell pieces and batch pieces are sort of a added bonus as part of the script. But it also does all that nice randomization and gives me those extra keys to XOR the strings so that the macro is really much less obvious or much more appealing, right? That's what the final result looks like out of a generation. Now, I think you'd be hard pushed to have AV catch that. I think it's going to work. So I was pretty excited by that. Okay, so there's one piece that's missing in that, and that is the payload string is not XORed anymore. Guess why? I haven't finished it, and it's that continuation line thing. I've got a routine in there that will XOR out and give you the characters, but then I end up with the problem of too many continuations. So I think it's 64 in the VV limit, and once you get beyond that, it starts screaming and wailing at you, and it's not going to work. But I'm going to split it up into multiple variables, and I will end up XORing the payload string when I get back to finish that little bit of code. Right? Any questions or observations about that? You all just XORed it in your head while you were reading it, right? I know Ben did. But okay. Well, then you're getting back to those old days of having to paste it all in and deal with multiple places to actually arm the thing and get it out there. And that's a little bit painful. All right, and I'll show you a demo in a minute about how this goes when I'm ready to actually prep the document. And so the question was, I keep forgetting to repeat, was like, what about if you just stick the payload into the document body itself? It's certainly possible, and that may end up being my solution, but I don't want to make it more difficult at time of document preparation. Okay. Any other questions on that? With that, we have a little Jean-Luc Picard. It's time to engage. It's demo time, but it's not going to be a live demo. All right, so I'm going to try to play this video. If I can hit the play button. So here's Psploit gen in action. It's a Python script. You go ahead and run it. Psploit gen, give it lhost, lport. It's designed for reverse payloads. It runs out, runs Msfvenom. It does want to assume that Msfvenom is in your path. So you want to probably do it on a Kali box. That's the easiest thing. It gens up the macros. And then after you've genned them, it gives you all this output in an encoded file name. Yeah. Let me just pause that for a minute. So the encoded file name is just a little convention. It's like PS for PowerShell, and then it's got your IP. It puts the architecture in there. It puts the meta, and then RTCP for reverse TCP, RHTTPS for that. Puts the port on the end. It just gens the files, and you can actually put multiple ports on there, and you can actually pass payload flags. There's other things you can do with it, and as I get to the end, we might go into sort of some live demo mode so I can show you some of the extra features. But it gens it up nicely for you, and you just end up with a file, and you can gen up multiple of them because you've got the multiple ports flag, right? And you just, have at it. So what I tend to do is I have a toolkit that I'll gen up different payloads and different ports, and then when I'm in an environment and I'm in that situation of examining C2 and maybe want to pivot around and doing stuff like that, I have all these, PowerShell scripts. This is more of the post-exploitation functionality of it. I have all these PowerShell scripts I can run just immediately, and they've got all those payloads in them, which is kind of nice. So it's really a tool that's got both pre-exploitation and post-exploitation features, because the pre-exploitation stuff is all Visual Basic Macro stuff, right? The post-exploitation stuff is the extra source that you get just because we're running this and we can just write out batch files and write out some PowerShell scripts as extra stuff we can use in a post-exploitation scenario. So it just makes it quicker for me, right? And the thing I absolutely detest is having to remember syntax. Like if you sit down with like Msfvenom and it's like, okay, yeah, what was that flag again? Oh, now wait, what was that encoding? Oh, drives me crazy. So I like to just have it ready to go. Okay, so let's try the play button again. Maybe I jinxed myself. So yeah, we end up with this PS1 files, we end up with the batch files, and then we end up with this. That's the macro, okay? Now I'm not making it so you can see it because it's massive and I just want to cut and paste it, right? That's where I'm going with this. I flip over to MS Word. This is a cool document. I create the macro, and it really is this simple. Just get rid of whatever's there, right? Paste in my macro. Hit run to test it. And I've got an interpreter listening on the other end, okay? And shell. So your document preparation now is like really, really simple, right? I mean, cut, paste. Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got to have somebody gen up the graphics and stuff if you want to, and the little button that says you must press this enable thing, right? So, yes, so much win. So much win. Thank you, Jean-Luc. So, all right. And, amazingly, 30 minutes. I could have done this as a stable talk. That is the end of the presentation. Please feel free to go out and get Psploit Gen. It's on Bitbucket. Take a picture of it if you like. If you'd like to read some of my random miscellaneous musings, there's my blog. And there's my email address. Feel free to contact me. And apparently there's some really warped unicorn thing on this slide. Thanks very much. Okay, questions? Ben. I don't know. Somebody told me that, okay, the question was, what's up with the damn unicorns? Somebody told me that at DerbyCon we have to put unicorns in our presentation, so I just took it to heart and I did it. So. All right, question back here, sir.
So some mitigations disable macros and PowerShell.
Sure. So the question was, what sort of mitigations can we do here? Certainly disable PowerShell. Many other talks at the con have stated that if you disable PowerShell in today's Windows world, you really are going to have a bad time with your domain environment. So not many folks are doing that. Okay. Disable macros. Yeah, so we had one environment. That's a good comment. We had one environment where they made it harder. I don't think they disabled it, but they made it so you had to hunt through the menus. I don't know what policies or whatever they set up to do that. And it actually was the coupon one I showed, right? And I actually asked the customer, I said, this is what because we always negotiate with them up front. I said, this is what we're going to do. And they told us about the policy. And I goes, okay, well, let's do it anyway. And one of their sysadmins came back after the person in question who was commissioning the test asked him and said, do you think our users are actually going to click this? And he's like, oh, yeah, they will go through the menus and find out. It's a coupon, right? So that worked spectacularly. They found out how to run it anyway, which was just crazy. But good comment, though. There are things you can do to mitigate. That's for sure. Other questions? Here? Adrian had a question.
So I was going to ask something like, you, as a dual income family, at least one, you have 2 jobs. You make more money as a pen tester or as a unicorn male model?
How to answer this question?
But I'm just curious. Get a referral.
Later, there's going to be a demo after certain beverages are imbibed. Thank you, Adrian, for the question. So, question back here. So, a couple of things there. The question was, do you see any other, I think, pain points, did you say, for detection? So, one of the things the macro does is actually, right now, reaches out to GitHub to pull down the PowerSploit script, right? And we actually had somebody in one of the tests see that. They saw that and they actually blocked it. So that was a challenge, right? What else? I'm not quite sure the details of this. Bo might know, but Bo mentioned to me, I think just yesterday, that FireEye was seeing some of this traffic. And do you have any details on that, Bo? No. Okay, it could have been that callback. Okay, so version 2, version 2 is I'm actually going to work out all this string stuff in VB, and I intend to put the content of the entire script XORed into the macro. I also intend to XOR the payload in there as well, so it's going to become much, much bigger, but I don't really want that callback to go out. Okay, I think there was a question over here.
Yeah, when you deliver these documents with the macro item, do you use the password to like a phishing email?
Yep. They do sometimes, yeah. It depends on the environment. So the question was, when you deliver these, do you just attach them to spam emails? And yeah, we do. But the thing that happens before that is we do extensive reconnaissance, and so we learn lots about their environment, and we try to learn whether it's possible that that's actually going to happen or not. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. Sometimes we fail. I failed one just recently, and that was exactly what happened. I think it was Message Labs that they had a policy they won't let any attachments in, and of course you're going to fail in that case. So, question here.
Is all the network traffic generated once the backer is opened by PowerShell?
Yeah, the process that sticks stuff in memory is going to be PowerShell. What I tend to do is run a migrate after I get the payload, and then just migrate out.
So a host-based firewall probably blocking your PowerShell and then access.
No, because the thread is put into memory, and then it's shellcode that's running in memory, even though it's running from the PowerShell process, but it's the shellcode that the thread is created in, so I don't think that would happen. Yeah. Other questions? Ethan, oh man, Ethan has a question. Prepare yourselves, everybody. Go ahead, Ethan.
Why did you move to PowerShell? Because the first version injects shellcode directly into memory using OpenDB.
Yeah. So the question was, why did you move to PowerShell in the first place? And the first version does, and it's actually Rapid7's version, right? And the Meterpreter version just injects directly into memory. Why I moved to PowerShell is not just for the shellcode execution. It's for the other functionality that you can get. One of the early examples I had there was like a download of base64 and then writing stuff to disk. So there's other things we can do. I was really after developing out the technique of how can I get PowerShell stuff to run out of the macro properly obfuscated, and then the other applications will follow, right? So. Any other questions? All right, everybody gets an early minute. Thanks very much for coming.